The trip to the other side of the world was a long one. From America to the Middle East, from the Middle East to South America, and now to Eastern Europe, we went across the globe and back again, coming and going over the Atlantic Ocean. We, and Liquid in tandem, kept going halfway around the world and back. The sound of wind rushing past machine, the sound of metal creaking under pressure, and lest I forget, the hum of the air conditioner. We were packed in between air and metal and machine. Not that the trip was unpleasant. It wasn't. Rather, we were like children in the protective womb. Snake and Sunny were asleep recharging for the next day. I, on the other hand, had much work to do to prepare for the mission. I built a list of information I wanted Colonel Campbell to have for us by the time we were 4 hours from landing. I took data from current maps as well as satellite and aerial imagery and constructed a 3D view compatible with Snake's solid eye. Traffic reports, weather forecasts, language trends, network statuses, PMC reports. I needed to gather a great amount of information, and I fed it through an automated filtering system to extract the most useful data. For my programs, sometimes I took snippets of useful open source code from the internet, and other times, when I had to, I wrote them myself. Snake often joked about how he was blue-collar and I was white-collar, but white-collar work wasn't necessarily easy work. The maintenance of the Mark II was my job too. Sensors, wheels, and leg joints, the auto balancer, and stealth camouflage. I had a checklist a mile long for that demanding, but cute, little guy.
"Who's this?"
Naomi's voice startled me. I turned to see her standing behind me, her finger pointed at a picture on my computer screen. "Oh, her?" The sudden question caught me by surprise, and my heart was beating a little fast. "That's my sister." I had Emma's picture on the edge of my terminal's desktop. The sister I hadn't been able to save. The sister to whom I hadn't been able to give my love. The sister I killed. I kept her picture there so I'd never forget. No, that's not true. Of course I could never forget, but I wanted her image burned into my brain every single day. Naomi knew none of this, not about Emma, about my guilt.
"Really? I never knew you had a sister. For a moment I thought she might have been your girlfriend."
Terribly embarrassed, I deflected my attention to the Mark II on the edge of my desk, which only served to make Naomi even more curious. I said, "I don't have a girlfriend." I reached inside the Metal Gear's maintenance port and switched on the benchmark mode. The robot began to self-test sequence and started to bend and stretch. "Emma was a brilliant programmer," I explained. "She wrote the worm that destroyed the Arsenal Gear AI."
"Where is she now?"
Where is she? I wondered. Wherever she was, our father was there, and even her mother too, acting like a typical mother. Somewhere they sat as a family around the dinner table, and there I could call Emma by her name. I hoped there was a place like that. I hoped she was there. A place I hadn't been able to give her, a place where I hadn't destroyed everything important. "She was murdered by Vamp," I said. That was the simple truth of it, and I couldn't find a better way to put it. Naomi's expression darkened and she realized she shouldn't have asked. She turned away and said,
"I'm so sorry."
"No, there's nothing for you to be sorry for." I looked at her. "I'm the same as you." She looked back at me, ready to listen. "I used to be an anime otaku," I explained. I wasn't being entirely honest. I still was one. But that was beside the point. "I was always fascinated by sci-fi anime. That's what got me into robotics." Back then, I delighted in my work designing Metal Gear Rex for AT Corp. But reality wasn't so simple, I said. I never even imagined that my science, that my own research, could cause so much misery. Naomi appeared perplexed, perhaps because my story was similar to the same sense of guilt she carried. I wanted her to know that I was the same as her, that she wasn't the only one that felt a duty to atone for her wrongs. "It's not like we scientists are Satanists or anything," I said. "But even when we have the best intentions, we end up being used by others for evil. Naomi just looked at me and let me talk, and I was able to meet her gaze because I knew we had the same guilt and the same duty. She drew her hand to the pendant around her neck and squeezed it tightly.
Dr. Emmerich,
As soon as she spoke, all my embarrassment flooded back. I sought refuge in the Mark II, pretending to work on its preparations. "You see this?" I said, changing the subject. "Sonny helped me build it."
Really? Sonny helped you?
As if she were my own child and I her proud parent, I boasted. "We built it using top-secret docs and patents dug up from intranets at a bunch of research labs. She wrote most of the controller's source code. To tell you the truth, I think she's better at it than I am." Naomi released her pendant. Maybe she had taken an interest in hearing me talk about Sonny, although now that I took a closer look at it, the object at her neck wasn't a pendant like I'd thought. It was a memory stick. I chuckled to myself. If she was using computer memory as an accessory, she really was a geek. Sonny was taken by the Patriots right after she was born. She never even met her parents. She spent her entire childhood inside the internet. Naomi gave an understanding look and said,
That's why she has trouble speaking.
"Her home is the internet. She can only look out from the inside. She's always in there, searching for herself, searching for her family. She's trying to figure out who she is and where she's going." Naomi quietly listened to me talk. Perhaps she saw herself in Sonny just as she'd seen herself in me, although Sonny wasn't old enough to be burdened by any sins save for the original one, so the connection was probably different than with me. She believes she can find the answers inside a machine hooked up to the world. She spends every day inside the net exploring. For Sonny, this is home.
No,
Naomi spoke.
it shouldn't be like that.
I was a little taken aback by her seriousness.
What? It's time you let her go outside.
My heart seemed to cower within my chest. I hadn't expected to hear her say the same thing Snake kept telling me. She had cut straight to the core of the situation, but all I could do was pretend not to understand and say, "What are you talking about?"
She hasn't even been born yet. She's still in the womb. You need to give her a real life.
Her eyes were grave. I realized I wasn't going to be able to get away with playing dumb. I turned to face the cargo bay and spread my arms wide. "Sonny's never shown any interest in leaving Nomad." It was the truth, sure. I knew I was being overprotective. I'd admit it, but more than my denying it to her, Sonny refused to connect herself to the outside world. I didn't know if it was because of her time in captivity with the Patriots, or if it was because of Snake and me, or both. "Frankly," I admitted, "I'm worried about letting her go out there." I was the one who was scared. I couldn't help but worry about her being exposed to all the irrationalities of the world. I'd already lost my sister. I didn't want to lose anyone else. But Naomi simply smiled at me as if to say, "Sonny is stronger than you may think." Then she said,
I have a feeling she'll do just fine.
"You really think she'll be okay out there?"
That's not what I meant. I think she's got a good handle on her science.
And with that, I was thoroughly lost from the conversation. I thought we were talking about whether or not I could let Sonny outside. But she suddenly shifted to our earlier talk about the sins of our science. Had we been talking about different things all along? Had we just assumed we'd been holding a conversation, piling one misunderstanding upon another? I took off my glasses and rubbed the bridge of my nose between my fingertips, and I tried to think of what to say next. "Sorry," is all I could come up with. "Go on."
Huh?
I was lousy at changing the subject. Mentally kicking myself for the continued social ineptitude, I said, "You were going to say something earlier?" Naomi nodded, but she fell silent. Perhaps she was nonplussed by the sudden shift in the conversation. That was probably why I could never get a woman. Then she smiled and said,
"Would you mind if I helped Sunny with her cooking?"
"Of course I wouldn't," I said, but judging from her earlier severe expression and the relative lightness of her question, I doubted that's what she'd originally intended to ask. That said, improvement in Sunny's fried eggs would be a revolutionary bit of culinary news. I started to put my glasses back on, only to be stopped by Naomi's hand. The sudden sensation of the coolness of her skin startled me. I'd always heard that women get cold more easily than men. Was this what they meant? Her skin was cool and delicate. I liked it.
"Leave them off,"
she said.
"You're more handsome this way."
You think so? Naomi's hand guided mine back to the desktop where I set down my glasses. She stared into my eyes, but unlike when we were talking about our sins, this time I found her gaze hard to meet. The look in her eyes held a different meaning now. Had she kept staring much longer, I truly would have fainted. Mercifully, she looked away from me and over at the military helicopter stored in the bay.
"Dr. Emmerich, is it okay if I sleep in there?"
Oh, sure. Her lips turned into the slightest smirk.
"Sorry, I know it's selfish of me, but I'd like to be alone for a while."
Right. I understand. I'll show you in. I led Naomi past the sleeping Snake and Sunny and to the helicopter's side hatch. Nomad's cargo bay was incredibly large, but with the military helicopter stored away, not much room was left on the sides. I slid open the hatch and moved aside just enough to let Naomi in. As she climbed up onto the waist-high floor, her chest brushed by me. There were only thin layers of clothing between us. An awkward moment. She got inside the helicopter, thanked me, and said goodnight. The blockhead I was, instead of some normal reply, I simply said, "Yeah." I wanted to do better than that, but I couldn't think of the words. After a moment, I said, "If you get uncomfortable or anything, just let me know. I'll be out here working."
"Thank you."
Now both of us were thinking of what to say. I spoke first, still unsure of where I was going with it. "And
"Yes?"
call me Hal. Good night." Naomi closed the hatch. I sighed for what seemed like the upteenth time that day. The hatch suddenly slid back open. Naomi's hand reached out and grabbed me by the shoulder. She pulled me toward her, and our eyes were barely an inch apart. She wrapped her arms around my neck. I climbed in and shut the hatch behind us.